Okay, so what I'm actually doing is picking up from chapter 11. Chapter 11 is when the monster begins his narration. And instead of just reviewing all the story elements, which you have already done, I want to point out maybe some other things to think about and to confuse you even more, and then hopefully clarify the confusion. So, in chapter 11, of course, the monster's looking at us humans in a fishbowl. There's a bunch of poor people that live in the little cottage. And through that, monster's trying to get an education. It would be kind of like somebody standing out the window, kind of just staring into class. Like you guys can think of like John over here, just kind of looking in. Only difference is every time we look out the window, he ducks his head. Okay, so it's kind of creepy, especially if the person outside is 8 feet tall and is composed of different bodies that have been sewn together. Okay, so hey, it's the best, right? Only the best parts. Okay, so anyways, looking through and he sees this old guy and the girl. He's not quite sure how to interact with humans. So, well, one thing, he does get hungry because he has needs. And when they go away, he goes in and takes all their food, raids the fridge, if you will. And then he goes back outside to observe and see what happens. And everybody is very sad that they don't have any food now. Somebody came and ate it all. I feel like that. Like sometimes I'm thinking I got those peanut butter patties waiting at home for after school, and I find out they're gone. And I'm like, hey, who ate them all? You guys have all been there. And they'll go, oh, sorry. Yeah, but now I don't have any patties. Well, in this case, they don't have any food. The monster feels bad, so he cuts up some firewood for them and leaves it outside their door. Now, they don't know who did this, so they think, wow, it's an angel. Must be a leprechaun. I don't know, something. It was some supernatural occurrence. Because people just wouldn't do this. It has to be something supernatural. A tooth fairy, maybe. So, you have all this, firewood. So he's trying to bond with humans somehow. And so they're teaching the little girl how to read. And hey, he's kind of staring out the window right there, trying to get an education. Like I said, it would be like if you didn't get accepted to RCC, but you go anyway, and you just kind of stare out the window and try to get an education by doing that. Who knows? Hey, I can't get into Harvard. Well, I haven't tried, but if I were to get into Harvard, but if they somehow rejected me for some weird reason, I'd go to Harvard anyway, and I'll just kind of sit in the back and get an education. Hey, why not? Steve Jobs did it. He dropped out of college, but everyone thinks he's a dropout. He wasn't a dropout. He dropped off the rolls, but he attended class. He just picked the classes he wanted to go to. And he got quite an education by doing that. And he put it into practice and built Apple. So, this idea of kind of auditing a class isn't such a foreign idea. Then in chapter 13, he begins to learn more about humanity. And that's where we have this irony, where on the one hand, humans are capable of great beauty. And he loves the human beings, the species, the race. But on the other hand, humans can be quite cruel. Think of little kids on the playground. They're so cute. But when you see them talk they could be mean. That cute little thing, man, they just kicked somebody in the stomach because they took one of their little gummy bears or something. So, he begins to see the good and the evil of man. And it gets worse. The more he reads, especially the book Ruins of Empire, he realizes man is more evil than he is good. Where the good becomes the exception, not the rule. That man, for the most part, is wicked, lazy, and cruel. So, what is he? What is he to make of it? Should he continue to aspire to be one of us? Or should he remain on the outside? And so then chapter 14 totally breaks from the narrative. I mean, it's like a story within a story. Chapter 14 is its own little short story, and the purpose of which is to give the background to the old guy, DeLacy, featured at the top of this picture here. Okay, so he's the old guy, and the story's trying to show how he got here. How did they end up in this little cottage in the forest? And so we go to Paris. So we're going way back in time. Another time, another place. You'll never see this in a film version of Frankenstein. You realize how costly it would to do chapter 14. You need to now recreate Paris. You need to hire actors and actresses for all of these roles. I mean, you got to basically create a short film and put that in your big film. Too much money. Chapter 14 is always the first chapter to go. So why is it here? Well, I'll talk about the what and then we'll get to the why. What is the story? Well, DeLacy has 2 kids. He has the young Agatha and he has the older Felix, who's kind of like your guys' age at the time of the story. Young guy, filled with passion, falls in love with Safi. And he falls in love with her and he'll do anything for her. You know, what would you do for love? I can only speak to the guys because this story's centered around a guy. You know, it'd be guys, if you fell in love with some woman, you'd be willing to do anything to get her. And then you find out that her dad's in jail. So to get her, you have to break him out. So would you break him out of prison? This is basically Prison Break right here. Although I'm a little inaccurate in my analogy, because his allegiance was to the father, actually, not her. She was secondary. But I wanted you guys to connect somehow to what's going on. Maybe she was just further incentive. And that's a lot of incentive to have her hand. So he does it. He breaks dad out of jail. Woohoo! Yeah, party. Gets her. We're all good to go. Of course, the authorities find out. Dad gets put back into jail. And Felix is then arrested. And the whole family, let's go back, the old man and his daughter, who have been innocent victims in this whole thing, now must all leave France. Now, we don't have that as a punishment in the United States. We have, imprisonment, community service, death penalty. What we don't have is this idea of, you know what? You've been so bad, you don't deserve to be an American citizen. So they take your citizenship away and deport you. Now, deportation is not the same thing. Deportation is when you weren't a citizen to begin with. So they just put you back where you were supposed to be. In this case, he was a citizen of France and is now no longer considered worthy of that title. And so it is a punishment. So they're thrown out with absolutely no job, no money. So they live off the land in the forest. Okay? Bunch of hippies or something. So he's out there, and that's chapter 14. Now, I want to just point this out to you. I want to show you this notion of story within a story within a story. Chapter 14 is Safi's story. She's the one telling it. But who is Safi talking to? She's talking to DeLacy, the old man, the dad. Because she returns, it's this great moment. Gothic beauty. She comes in, it's this great moment. And she's telling Dad about this stuff that had happened. But who's relating that story to us? The monster. But who's the monster actually telling this whole thing to? He's talking to Victor in the cave. But Victor in the cave is telling... Who's Victor actually telling the story to? R. Walton in the North Pole. And R. Walton has written everything down in a letter to his sister. And then there's us. That's a student that was here one of the first years I did this. And so I want you to see this concept of framing. And authors do this. It's called framing, where you go story within a story within a story. How many frames deep are you going to go? Mary Shelley helped pioneer this whole idea. And she went in like, what? How many layers is that? 4 or 5 layers, right? So going backwards, right? You got the sisters reading a letter from her uncle, Victor Monster DeLacy Safi. That's chapter 14. So.
Adios.